We are only asking that wages be protected from inflation.
The crowd set off down Russell Street with banners flying.
Union claims are unsustainable.
Those in favour, please.
Teachers today held their second stop work meeting within a week.
From the 1980s.
After a great deal of what the Treasurer calls argy-bargy with the unions, the government finally put its wage case this morning.
When you finish.
To 2022, where the political rhetoric about wage increases has heated up with echoes of the days of old.
Order! $1 extra. That is what this debate is about.
Anthony Albanese is a loose unit on the economy.
The Prime Minister says you're a loose unit.
Well, this Prime Minister is loose with the truth.
He just runs off at the mouth. I mean, it's like he just unzips his head and he just lets everything fall on the table.
We have finally come to a point in the election campaign where there is a genuine point of disagreement between the major parties. The subject is wages, and both sides are taking significant risks. After doing all in its power to minimise the points of difference with the government on budget policy and economic management, Labor has broken cover on its most traditional issue, the wages of the low paid.
Hello.
The opposition leader is asserting the case for a significant pay rise for those on the minimum wage, which would eventually flow through the award system into millions of workers' pay packets. Anthony Albanese is gambling that whatever the scare campaign about the impact of a wage rise on the economy, enough voters will be feeling the constraints of a world in which their pay has not increased for years, compounded by rising inflation, to take a risk. But they will not be the only ones taking a risk.
Are you comfortable with some of Australia's lowest paid workers essentially getting a real wage cut?
What I'm saying is you need to balance all of these things very carefully. That's what responsible economic management is.
Scott Morrison is betting that he can persuade a cautious electorate of the risks to the economy of such a wage rise, a talisman for what he has been darkly warning about Albanese since the beginning of the campaign, and that this will outweigh voters' strained household budgets, even in an election which is primarily about the cost of living.
There is a reason why, Anthony Albanese was never given a financial portfolio hasn't been given a financial portfolio by any of the Labor leaders in the past. It's because they knew he couldn't be trusted with money.
When I was asked, would I welcome wages for minimum wages keeping up with the cost of living, I answered yes, because I would. We're talking about cleaners. We're talking about retail workers. It is not enough to say, thank you for what you did getting us through the pandemic, and then say, we want to cut your real wage. That is what Scott Morrison is saying.
So what is the argument technically all about? Wages, including minimum wages, are not set by the federal government. The minimum wage is set by the Independent Fair Work Commission. It is currently considering how that rate should be adjusted. It considers arguments from employers and unions. In recent years, governments have provided information to the Commission to help in its deliberations, but has not argued for a specific increase. Innes Willocks is the Chief Executive of AI Group, one of the major employer representatives.
It isn't a command and control economy that we have operating in Australia. Everyone's entitled to their view and their perspective, but in the end, it's an independent commission that makes this judgment.
On the other side of the debate, the ACTU has just upped its claim before the Fair Work Commission for the minimum wage to be lifted by 5.5%. That's up from its original claim of 5%. In the wake of news, annual inflation is now running at 5.1%. Labor isn't backing the 5.5% claim. It has backed a rise equal to inflation, but it hasn't actually said it would argue this in a formal submission to the Fair Work Commission if it won government. Labor's IR spokesman, Tony Burke, says that is a stark contrast with the government's position.
They are actively trying to keep wages low at a time that inflation is going up. Now, Anthony's made clear the simple principle: people should not continue to go backwards.
The question is, who is right about the economic impact? What does a non-inflationary pay rise look like?
So something in the order of around 4% would be consistent with inflation within that range. Now, Would higher wages growth, around 5.1%, add to inflation? Not necessarily. It wouldn't necessarily cause an inflation breakout, if you like, but it would embed a higher level of inflation than that RBA range.
For some years now, we have faced the unusual problem of inflation and wages being too low. And that's actually proved a drag on growth, argues economist Angela Jackson.
Real wages falling obviously impacts consumers, it impacts households, it undermines that confidence and that spending in the economy that effectively drives economic growth. So there is a really careful balancing act here.
Labor says it will convene an economic summit to talk to employers and unions about issues like the broken enterprise bargaining system, which could boost productivity. The AI group also updated its submission yesterday. It now says the minimum wage should be increased by 2.5% instead of 2%. That's a long way short of the ACTU's 5.5%. But Ines Willicks argues that in addition to that increase, the Commission has to take account of a 0.5% super payment plus the value of government payments to households, including the temporary tax cut known as the Low to Middle Income Tax Offset, or Lamington,
which equate to a 1.3% increase in the minimum wage in terms of money going into people's pockets.
AI Group says that means workers would get 4.3% more in the pocket. Labor famously used tax cuts in the 1980s and 1990s to boost household income as a trade-off for workers accepting lower wages. But Tony Burke says things are different now. The Lamington is due to be taken away after the current financial year, when the new minimum wage rate is set. That will be well after the election, but with households still facing higher costs of living.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.